The classified ad had been almost too good to be true. Live-in housekeeper needed. Private estate, $6,000 a month plus room and board. Discretion required. 23-year-old Sofia Chen had responded within minutes, desperation overriding the warning bells that should have been ringing. Her younger brother's experimental leukemia treatment cost $8,000 monthly, and her 3 part-time jobs combined barely covered half. The eviction notice taped to her studio apartment door that morning had been the final push into territory she'd normally avoid. Now, standing before iron gates that belonged on a medieval fortress rather than a Chicago suburb, Sofia questioned every decision that had led her here. The estate stretched beyond what her eyes could capture in the November twilight, stone walls topped with cameras, guards visible even from the entrance, and a mansion that could house 50 families like hers. "Name," demanded the security guard, his hand resting casually on the weapon at his hip. His eyes were cold, assessing, the kind that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. "Sofia Chen. I have an interview with—" She glanced at the business card that had arrived by courier yesterday. "Mr. Dante Marcello." The guard's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, something between pity and respect crossing his weathered features. He spoke into his radio in rapid Italian before the gates began their slow, ominous swing inward. "Follow the drive. Park at the main entrance. Don't deviate from the path. Don't touch anything. Don't take photos." Sophia's ancient Toyota seemed to shrink as she drove through manicured grounds that belonged in a magazine spread. Fountains, sculptures, gardens maintained with military precision despite the approaching winter. More guards appeared at intervals, tracking her progress with tactical efficiency that made her stomach clench. The mansion itself was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Italian Renaissance architecture with modern security features that couldn't quite be disguised. Cameras everywhere, reinforced windows, and an unmistakable air of danger that clung to the beautiful facade like morning fog. A woman in her 60s waited at the top of marble steps, her severe gray suit and tight bun suggesting she ran this household with iron discipline. "Miss Chen, I'm Mrs. Calabrese, the head of household staff. You're precisely on time. Mr. Marcello appreciates punctuality. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you." Sofia followed the older woman through doors that belonged in a museum, her sneakers squeaking against marble floors that reflected crystal chandeliers above. Every surface gleamed with the kind of wealth that made her second-hand interview outfit feel even shabbier. "The position requires someone with specific qualifications," Mrs. Calabrese began, her heels clicking rhythmically as they navigated hallways lined with artwork Sofia recognized from her art history electives. "Mr. Marcello's daughter requires specialized care. The previous 12 housekeepers proved inadequate." 12 housekeepers. The number should have sent Sofia running, but the memory of her brother's pale face in that hospital bed kept her feet moving forward. They entered a west wing that felt different from the rest of the mansion, quieter, softer, with fewer sharp edges and more natural light. Mrs. Calabrese paused before an ornate door, her expression softening for the first time. "Isabella is 7 years old. She hasn't spoken a single word since her mother's death 3 years ago. The trauma severed something inside her." Sofia's heart was constricted. 7 years old, the same age her brother had been when their parents died in the factory fire, leaving her to raise him alone at 17. "Mr. Marcello has exhausted every medical option, psychiatrists, speech therapists, specialized programs. Nothing has worked." The older woman's voice dropped. "He's tried to hide it, but watching his daughter locked in silence is destroying him. He needs someone who won't treat her like she's broken." Before Sofia could respond, a crash echoed from behind the door, followed by the sound of something shattering. Mrs. Calabrese didn't react with surprise, only resignation. She's having one of her episodes. The previous housekeeper quit yesterday after Isabella threw a vase during lunch. The door opened to reveal chaos. A bedroom that looked like a princess's dream now resembled a war zone. Books scattered across the floor, curtains torn from their rods, and in the corner a small figure with dark hair curled into a ball, her whole body shaking with silent sobs. Two other staff members stood helplessly near the door, clearly afraid to approach the crying child. Sophia's protective instincts overrode every ounce of common sense as she moved past them, ignoring Mrs. Calabrese's warning hand. She'd seen this before. Not the luxury or the mansion, but the pain, the isolation, the desperate need to communicate trapped behind walls of trauma. Sophia knelt 6 feet away from Isabella, not attempting to touch or crowd her. The little girl wore an expensive velvet dress now wrinkled and stained with tears, her small hands pressed over her ears as she rocked back and forth. Without speaking, Sophia began to sign. Simple, clear movements her hands had learned years ago when her brother had temporarily lost his hearing after the fire. "Hello, my name is Sophia. You don't have to talk. I can listen with my eyes." Isabella's rocking slowed. Her red-rimmed eyes peeked out from behind her knees, surprise evident on her tear-streaked face. Sophia continued signing, her movements deliberate and calm. "I see you're upset. That's okay. Feelings are supposed to be felt, not hidden." The little girl's hands slowly dropped from her ears, her dark eyes, intelligent, hurting, incredibly aware, fixed on Sophia with an intensity that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Do you know sign language?" Sophia asked, her expression gentle and open, free of the pity she'd seen on the other staff members' faces. After a long moment, Isabella's small hands moved hesitantly, forming clumsy signs that were nonetheless clear. No one else here knows how to talk with hands. Sophia felt her throat tighten with emotion. This child had been trying to communicate, but in a mansion full of people, she'd been completely alone. "I know how to talk with hands. Would you like me to teach you more?" The transformation was gradual, but unmistakable. Isabella uncurled from her defensive ball, her breathing slowing as Sophia simply sat with her, occasionally signing small observations about the room, asking no questions, making no demands. "Your room is beautiful," Sophia signed. "I especially like the stars on your ceiling." Isabella glanced up at the constellation of glow-in-the-dark stars someone had carefully applied to her ceiling, then back to Sophia. Her hands moved slowly. "Mama put them there. Before." The word hung heavy between them. Before. Before the silence. Before the trauma. Before whatever had stolen this child's voice and left her stranded in a world that didn't know how to reach her. A sound from the doorway made both of them turn. A man stood there, filling the frame with a presence that made everyone else in the room seem to fade into background noise. He was perhaps 40, with dark hair silvered at the temples, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Sophia's yearly rent. His face was all sharp angles and controlled intensity, handsome in a dangerous way that made her pulse quicken with instinctive wariness. But it was his eyes that held her frozen, dark, calculating, and in this moment, completely focused on his daughter with an expression of such raw hope and fear that Sophia felt like an intruder, witnessing something too private for strangers. Dante Marcello, Chicago's most notorious name, the man whose business dealings were whispered about but never directly mentioned, the crime lord who controlled half the city through methods polite society pretended not to see. And right now, he looked like nothing more than a desperate father watching a miracle unfold. Isabella noticed her father and immediately tensed, her hands dropping to her sides as if caught doing something wrong. Sophia watched the interaction with her trained eye, the child seeking approval, the father's barely concealed desperation, and the painful distance between them despite obvious love. "It's okay to keep talking," Sofia signed to Isabella, deliberately not looking at Dante. "Your hands can say anything your voice would say." "What did you just tell her?" Dante's voice was low, controlled, but carrying unmistakable authority beneath the calm surface. Sofia rose slowly, aware of every guard who had materialized behind him, every eye, now fixed on her with varying degrees of suspicion. "I told her it's okay to keep signing, that her hands can speak for her. She knows sign language?" The question emerged sharp with accusation, as if Sofia had been withholding crucial information. "No, sir. Just a few basic signs. But she's clearly been trying to communicate." Sofia gestured toward a corner where she'd noticed scratch marks on the wallpaper, deliberate patterns that could have been attempts at letters or symbols. "She's been leaving messages. You just needed someone who could read them." Dante moved into the room with predatory grace, his attention shifting between his daughter and Sofia with calculated assessment. "The previous housekeepers said she was nonverbal, impossible to reach. They recommended institutionalization." The cold fury in his voice wasn't directed at Sofia, but at the professionals who had suggested sending his daughter away. She recognized that anger. She'd felt it herself when doctors had suggested giving up on her brother's treatment, calling it quality of life decisions, when what they really meant was, "He's too expensive to save." "She's not nonverbal," Sofia stated with more boldness than wisdom. "She's communicating in a language no one here speaks. That's not the same thing." The room fell silent except for the whisper of expensive curtains moving in the climate-controlled air. Sofia became acutely aware she'd just contradicted a man who didn't tolerate contradiction, whose reputation included making problems disappear permanently. But then Dante did something unexpected. He knelt beside his daughter, his movements careful and deliberate, as if approaching a wounded bird. "Bella," he said softly, using what was clearly a nickname filled with desperate affection. "Can you show Papa what you were doing with your hands?" Isabella looked between her father and Sofia, uncertainty clear in her expressive eyes. Sofia gave her an encouraging nod, signing, "Show him. He wants to understand." The little girl's hands moved hesitantly, forming the signs Sofia had taught her. "Hello. My name is Isabella." Dante's composure cracked. For just a moment his carefully controlled mask slipped, revealing the grief and hope of a father who'd spent 3 years watching his daughter slip further into silence. His hand moved as if to touch Isabella's face, then stopped, as though afraid she might shatter. "Teach me," he said, turning to Sofia with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Teach me how to talk to my daughter." Mrs. Calabrese stepped forward, her practical nature reasserting itself despite the emotional moment. "Mr. Marcello, Miss Chen hasn't actually been hired yet. We haven't discussed terms, conducted background checks. She's hired." Dante stood, his commanding presence immediately transforming the room's atmosphere. "Whatever she was offered, triple it. Private suite in this wing. Full access to Isabella. And Mrs. Calabrese," his voice dropped, "to something dangerous. Anyone who has a problem with the new arrangement can collect their severance and leave by evening." Sofia's mind reeled. Triple the salary meant $18,000 monthly. Life-changing money. Her brother could get the treatment. The eviction could be stopped. Every financial burden crushing her could suddenly become manageable. But watching Dante's guards and their carefully positioned hands near weapons, seeing the cold efficiency of this operation disguised as a household, she understood with crystal clarity that accepting this offer meant entering a world from which there might be no safe exit. Isabella tugged on Sofia's sleeve, her small hand warm and trusting. The little girl's dark eyes held a question and a plea. "Don't leave me alone again." The decision made itself. "I'll need weekends to visit my brother," Sofia heard herself saying, negotiating with a Mafia boss as if it were a normal job interview. "He's in treatment at Northwestern, and I'll need assurance that if anything happens to me, his medical care continues. Dante's eyes narrowed, reassessing her with new calculation. Your brother's condition? Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He's 13. The experimental treatment is his last option. A muscle twitched in Dante's jaw. He pulled out his phone, speaking rapid Italian to someone on the other end. Within 30 seconds, he'd arranged for a complete review of her brother's case by Chicago's leading oncology team, all expenses covered under his charitable foundation. Sofia should have felt relief. Instead, cold understanding settled in her chest. Her brother's life would be saved, but now she would owe Dante Marcello a debt that couldn't be measured in money. Your brother will receive the best care available, Dante stated, pocketing his phone. In return, you help my daughter find her voice. Whatever she needs, whatever you need, it's done. The only rule is that Isabella's well-being comes before everything else, including your own comfort or safety. The last part was delivered with casual certainty, a statement of fact rather than a threat. In this household, the child was the most valuable treasure, protected above all else. Sofia would be expected to throw herself in front of any danger to shield Isabella, no questions asked. I understand, Sofia replied, meeting his gaze directly despite the intimidation radiating from him. But I have one more condition. The guards shifted. Mrs. Calabresi's intake of breath was audible. No one made conditions with Dante Marcello. If I'm going to help Isabella, I need honesty. No one can heal in an environment built on lies and secrets. Sofia kept her voice steady, aware she was dancing on a knife's edge. She needs to know it's safe to communicate, that her words, however they come, won't be used against her or the people she loves. The silence stretched taut enough to snap. Dante studied her with those dark, calculating eyes, and Sofia wondered if she'd just made a fatal miscalculation. Then, incredibly, he nodded once. Agreed. Within these walls, with Isabella, there will be truth. His expression hardened. But understand this, Miss Chen. The truth in this house exists in a world you don't want to fully know. There are things my daughter has seen, things that stole her voice. Your job is to help her process that trauma, not to investigate it. The warning was clear. Help the child, but don't dig into how she became traumatized. Don't ask questions about the business that required armed guards and fortress walls. Don't look too closely at the violence that clearly permeated this beautiful prison. Isabella pulled on Sofia's hand, her small fingers squeezing gently. The little girl's face had lost some of its earlier devastation, replaced by tentative hope that was heartbreaking in its fragility. Will you stay? Isabella signed, the question clumsy but clear. Sofia squeezed back, signing her response so the child could understand. Yes, I'm staying. As Mrs. Calabresi led her away to discuss logistics and see her new quarters, Sofia caught Dante's reflection in a hallway mirror. He stood in Isabella's doorway, watching his daughter with an expression that revealed the man beneath the monster reputation, exhausted, terrified, and so desperately in love with his child that he'd made a deal with a complete stranger based on 5 minutes of witnessed connection. The private suite Sofia was given could have housed her entire previous apartment 3 times over. Bedroom, sitting room, private bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool, and a balcony overlooking the estate's eastern gardens. Luxury beyond anything she'd experienced. But it was the view from her window that made everything real. Guard rotations visible even from this distance, the way certain outbuildings were clearly off-limits, and the armored vehicles partially hidden behind the garage. She'd traded her humble, honest life for a golden cage in a kingdom built on violence. And she'd done it without hesitation, for the same reason Dante Marcello did everything. For family. For the child who needed her. For the brother whose life now depended on the devil's charity. Sofia Chen had crossed a threshold there was no returning from. The only question remaining was what price she'd ultimately pay for that crossing. Sofia's first official morning in the Marcello mansion began at 6 a.m., with a soft knock on her door. Mrs. Calabrese entered bearing coffee and a thick binder that landed on the sitting room table with ominous weight. Isabella's schedule, medical history, trigger warnings, and household protocols, the older woman explained, her tone brisk but not unkind. Mr. Marcello is particular about his daughter's routine. Deviation causes distress for both of them. Sofia flipped through pages documenting 3 years of failed interventions. Psychiatrists who'd been dismissed after suggesting medication, therapists who'd left after. Isabella refused to engage, specialists who'd recommended institutionalization. The notes grew increasingly desperate toward the end, with one doctor's final assessment circled in angry red ink. Child demonstrates selective mutism rooted in witnessed trauma. Prognosis for verbal recovery. Poor. What did she witness? Sofia asked quietly, though she suspected she wouldn't get a complete answer. Mrs. Calabrese's expression closed like a steel trap. That's not in the binder for a reason, Miss Chen. The rest is Mr. Marcello's story to tell, if he chooses. The household protocol section was equally revealing. Isabella took meals in her room or the private family dining area, never the main hall where business associates were entertained. She was kept to the East Wing, away from the West Wing offices where Dante conducted his operations. Guards rotated specifically to watch her windows. No visitors were permitted without Dante's explicit approval. A prison built from love and fear in equal measure. Breakfast is at 7:30, Mrs. Calabrese continued. Isabella prefers the small terrace when weather permits. Mr. Marcello joins her when his schedule allows, which lately has been rarely. The disapproval in her voice was subtle but clear. For all his devotion, Dante's business had been consuming more of his time, leaving Isabella increasingly isolated despite the mansion full of staff. Sofia found Isabella already on the terrace, a small figure dwarfed by an ornate table set for two. The little girl wore a navy dress with white collar, her dark hair pulled back in a neat braid. She looked like a doll arranged for display, rather than a child preparing to eat. "Good morning," Sofia signed, settling into the chair across from her. "Did you sleep well?" Isabella's hands moved slowly. Bad dreams. Always bad dreams. The admission was matter of fact, as if nightmares were simply part of her existence. Sofia's heart ached for this child who'd normalized her own trauma. Breakfast arrived on silver trays, perfectly cut fruit, fluffy pancakes arranged just so, fresh juice in crystal glasses. Isabella picked at her food with mechanical precision, eating because it was expected, not from any apparent hunger or enjoyment. "Do you like pancakes?" Sofia asked, watching the child's disinterested consumption. Isabella shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes. Mama used to make them different, with chocolate chips that looked like smiley faces. "Would you like me to ask the kitchen to make them that way?" The little girl's eyes widened with something almost like fear. "Papa says everything must be proper now. No messes, no chocolate faces." Her small hands formed the signs with resigned sadness. Proper is safer. Sofia absorbed this glimpse into Dante's mindset. Control everything. Eliminate chaos. Create order from the trauma that had shattered their lives. She understood the impulse even as she recognized its limitations. You couldn't heal a child by erasing every reminder of joy. A commotion from inside the mansion interrupted their breakfast. Raised voices in Italian, the sound of furniture scraping across marble, and then Dante's voice cutting through the noise with cold authority. Isabella's hands immediately went to her ears, her breathing accelerating. Sofia moved quickly, kneeling beside the child's chair and gently guiding her attention back. "Look at me," she signed. "Just at me. The noise can't hurt you here." But Isabella was already spiraling, her eyes darting toward the windows as memories clearly overwhelmed present reality. Sofia recognized the signs of a panic attack beginning and made a split-second decision. She started humming, a simple, repetitive melody her own mother had used during the factory fire when Sofia had been paralyzed with fear. The sound cut through Isabella's panic, drawing her attention like a lighthouse beam through fog. Sofia's hands moved in rhythm with her humming, creating a pattern of sound and motion that Isabella's traumatized brain could latch onto. Slowly, incrementally, the little girl's breathing steadied. "That's it," Sofia signed when the humming paused. "You're safe. I'm here. Nothing bad is happening right now." "What the hell is going on out here?" Dante stood in the terrace doorway, his suit jacket discarded and shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms marked with scars that told stories Sofia didn't want to imagine. His face was flushed with barely controlled anger, though whether at the interrupted meeting or Isabella's distress wasn't clear. "She was startled by the noise," Sofia explained calmly, positioning herself subtly between father and daughter. "We were working through it." Dante's eyes fixed on how Sofia had placed herself as a shield, his expression shifting to something unreadable. He took a deliberate breath, visibly forcing himself toward calm before kneeling to his daughter's level. "Are you okay, Bella?" His signing was clumsy, clearly recently learned, but the effort was evident. Isabella nodded, then signed something that made Dante's jaw clench. "Were you hurting someone?" The innocent question hung heavy with implication. This child had learned to associate her father's raised voice with violence, had been conditioned to fear what happened when he lost control. "No, Piccola," Dante signed back, the endearment jarring against his intimidating presence. "Just business disagreement. No one was hurt." The lie was obvious to Sofia, if not to Isabella. The child seemed to accept it with the resignation of someone who'd learned not to push for uncomfortable truths. Dante rose, his attention shifting to Sofia with new intensity. "My office, now. Mrs. Calabrese will stay with Isabella." It wasn't a request. The walk through the mansion to Dante's private office felt like a march to execution. Guards nodded respectfully as they passed, but their eyes tracked Sofia with the alertness of men trained to identify threats. She was still too new, too unknown, too much of a risk in their world. Dante's office reflected the man: dark wood, leather, and steel, with floor-to-ceiling windows that somehow felt more like a strategic vantage point than a view. The massive desk was clear, except for a single framed photo of Isabella as a toddler, laughing in a woman's arms. Her mother, Sofia assumed. The ghost that haunted this entire mansion. "Sit." Dante moved to a bar cart, pouring amber liquid into crystal glasses without asking if she wanted one. He placed a glass before her with controlled precision before settling into his own chair with the coiled tension of a predator at rest. "My daughter asked if I was hurting someone," he stated flatly. "Because in her experience, when Papa raises his voice, violence follows." "Do you understand what that means?" Sofia met his gaze steadily. "It means she's witnessed things no child should see, that she associates you with both safety and danger, and that she's learned to read situations for survival rather than security." "Clever," Dante acknowledged, taking a measured sip. "Most people dance around the truth. But you're right. Isabella has seen things. Things that happen in my world. Things her mother tried to shield her from and paid for that protection with her life." The admission hung between them, heavy with implications Sofia didn't want to examine too closely. 3 years ago, a rival family decided to send a message by targeting my wife during a charity gala. Dante continued, his voice taking on the mechanical quality of someone reciting facts to avoid feeling them. They waited until she was separated from her security, cornered her in a private hallway. Isabella had wandered away from her nanny, found her mother. My daughter watched her mother die. he finished quietly. She screamed for help, but no one came in time. By the time my men found them, Gabriella was gone and Isabella was silent. Sofia's hand trembled slightly around her untouched glass. The men who did it no longer exist. The casual delivery made the statement even more chilling. Neither does their family, their associates, or anyone who stood between me and revenge. I burned their entire organization to the ground and salted the earth where it stood. He leaned forward, his dark eyes boring into hers with unsettling intensity. I tell you this so you understand what you've walked into, Miss Chen. My enemies know that my daughter is the one thing in this world I value above my own life, which makes her a perpetual target. And now, by extension, so are you. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Is there a current threat? Sofia asked, proud that her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. There's always a threat. Dante opened a drawer, producing a small velvet box that he slid across the desk. Open it. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet, beautiful and feminine, with what appeared to be a small charm dangling from it. Up close, Sofia could see the charm was actually a sophisticated piece of technology. Panic button, Dante explained. Press and hold for 3 seconds. Every guard on the estate responds to your location within 30 seconds. GPS tracking if you leave the property. And he pulled out his phone, tapping a few buttons that made the bracelet emit a soft beep. I can locate you anywhere in the world. Sofia stared at the elegant shackle, understanding its dual nature. Protection and surveillance, safety and control. Put it on, Dante instructed. It doesn't come off except for showering. You wear it every moment you're responsible for my daughter. She fastened the bracelet around her wrist, feeling its slight weight like a brand. She now belonged to the Marcello household in a way that transcended employment. There's something else you should know, Dante continued, his expression hardening further. The Rossi family has been making moves lately, testing boundaries, probing for weaknesses. Intelligence suggests they're planning something significant. Until we know what, security protocols are at maximum. What does that mean for Isabella? It means she doesn't leave the estate grounds. All her activities are confined to secure areas. No exceptions. He stood, moving to the windows to stare out at his kingdom. It also means you're now part of her protection detail. You go where she goes. You sleep in the adjoining room I'm having prepared. You become her shadow. Sofia absorbed this evolution from housekeeper to bodyguard, realizing the job description had been deliberately vague because the reality was too complex to advertise. I'm not trained for security work, she pointed out. I don't know how to— You don't need to fight, Dante interrupted. That's what my men do. Your job is to keep Isabella calm, keep her stable, and if something happens, you get her to the panic room, and you don't come out until I personally retrieve you, understood? The panic room. Of course there was a panic room, probably multiple throughout the estate. Show me, Sofia said. Show me the protocols, the safe routes, everything I need to know to protect her properly. Respect flickered across Dante's face, there and gone, like lightning. Marco, he called toward the door. A man in his 30s entered, military bearing, cold eyes, and the look of someone who'd done terrible things in service of his employer. Sir? Marco is head of Isabella's security detail, Dante explained. He'll train you on emergency protocols. You start immediately. The next 3 hours were a crash course in paranoia and preparation. Marco walked Sofia through every inch of the estate's security measures: pressure sensors in the gardens, reinforced doors disguised as ordinary entrances, hidden passages between rooms, and yes, 3 separate panic HIE rooms on different levels. The primary panic room is accessed through Isabella's closet, Marco explained in accented English, demonstrating how a specific pattern on the shoe rack triggered a hidden door. Biometric lock will be programmed for you, Mr. Marcello, and myself. Steel reinforcement, independent air supply, satellite phone, weapons locker, and enough provisions for 72 hours. Sophia stepped into the hidden room, taking in the space that was half fortress, half trauma. A small bed with Isabella's favorite stuffed animals already arranged on it. A tablet loaded with movies and games, coloring books and art supplies. Everything a terrified child might need during a siege. Has she had to use this? Sophia asked quietly. Marco's expression remained neutral. Twice. Once during the initial threat after Mrs. Marcello's death. Once during a false alarm 6 months ago when a rival family's scout was spotted near the perimeter. How did she handle it? Silently. Marco's tone suggested this wasn't a positive. She shut down completely both times. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, just stared at the door waiting for her father. It's why Mr. Marcello is adamant she not be alone if it happens again. They continued the tour, Marco pointing out emergency exits, secure vehicles kept fueled and ready, even a helicopter pad on the mansion's east side. The level of preparation spoke to a life lived under constant threat, where violence wasn't a possibility, but an inevitability. One more thing, Marco said as they concluded. If something happens to Mr. Marcello, my orders are to get Isabella to a safe location in Canada. You'd go with her, help keep her stable during the transition. What about his family? Other relatives? Miss Isabella is his only family. Marco's voice softened almost imperceptibly. His parents are dead. No siblings. And Mrs. Marcello was an only child. That little girl is the last of the Marcello bloodline, which is why she's so heavily protected, and why certain enemies would love to eliminate her. The weight of that responsibility settled on Sophia's shoulders like a physical burden. She wasn't just caring for a traumatized child, she was protecting a dynasty's last heir. When Sophia returned to the East Wing, she found Isabella in her bedroom, sitting at a child-sized table covered in art supplies. The little girl was drawing with intense concentration, her small tongue poking out slightly as she worked. "Can I see?" Sophia signed, approaching slowly. Isabella looked up, considering, then slid the paper toward her. The drawing was startlingly sophisticated for a 7-year-old, a woman with long, dark hair standing in a garden, surrounded by flowers. The attention to detail was remarkable, from the individual petals to the delicate shading. "Your mama?" Sophia signed. Isabella nodded, then her hands moved. "I draw her so I don't forget her face. Papa doesn't like me to ask about her. It makes him sad." The admission revealed the careful dance this child performed daily, managing her own grief while protecting her father from his. 7 years old and already sacrificing her emotional needs for others' comfort. "It's okay to remember her," Sophia signed. "It's okay to be sad. And it's okay to make Papa sad sometimes. That's what love is. Feeling things together. Even the hard things." Isabella's eyes welled with tears that she quickly blinked away, the gesture so practiced it broke Sophia's heart. How many times had this child cried alone, silencing her grief to avoid burdening the adults around her? Sophia settled onto the floor beside Isabella's chair, picking up a crayon and pulling over a blank sheet of paper. "Tell me about your mama. What did she like to do?" For the next hour, Isabella communicated through drawings and sign language, painting a picture of Gabriella Marcello that contradicted everything Sophia had assumed about a mafia wife. She'd been an artist, teaching Isabella to draw before she could write. She'd loved gardening, especially roses. She'd sung constantly, filling the mansion with music that had died with her. She used to say that even in dark places, you can grow beautiful things. Isabella signed, her small hands moving with increasing confidence. like roses in shadow gardens. The metaphor wasn't lost on Sofia. Gabriella had been trying to raise something beautiful in the dark world her husband inhabited. And then that darkness had consumed her. A soft knock interrupted their session. Dante stood in the doorway, his earlier intensity replaced by careful neutrality. "May I join you?" Isabella nodded, though she tensed slightly as her father entered her sanctuary. Sofia noticed how Dante moved carefully, announcing his presence, keeping his movements slow and predictable. All the behaviors of someone trying not to frighten a skittish animal. "Papa wants to see your drawings," Sofia signed to Isabella, giving the child permission to share her work. Isabella hesitated, then slid the picture of Gabriella across the table. Dante's sharp intake of breath was audible, his composure cracking as he stared at his late wife's face rendered in crayon by their daughter's hand. "She's beautiful, Bella," he managed, his voice rough. "Just like I remember her. Just like you." Isabella's hands moved hesitantly. "Do you think Mama would be proud of me?" The question devastated him visibly. Dante knelt beside his daughter's chair, his large hand hovering near her small one before gently covering it. "Your mother would be so incredibly proud of the strong, brave girl you've become. I promise you that, Piccola. But I'm not brave," Isabella signed with heartbreaking honesty. "Brave people aren't scared all the time." "Bravery isn't the absence of fear," Sofia interjected, her own hands moving to translate her words. "It's being scared and doing the hard things anyway, like sharing your drawings even when it feels scary. Like learning new ways to communicate when speaking feels impossible." Dante's eyes met hers over Isabella's head, something like gratitude flickering in their dark depths before his mask reassembled. "Miss Chen is right," he said, forcing his attention back to his daughter. "And you've been braver than anyone should have to be. But you don't have to be brave alone anymore, okay? That's why Sofia is here. To be brave with you." The promise hung in the air. A fragile hope that this time might be different from the previous 12 housekeepers who'd failed to connect with the silent child. That evening, Sofia discovered the adjoining room Dante had mentioned, a comfortable space decorated in soft blues and creams, connected to Isabella's bedroom by a door that could be left open. A monitor on the nightstand showed multiple camera angles of Isabella's room, though Dante had given Sofia permission to turn them off, if Isabella preferred privacy. As she prepared for bed, Sofia examined the gold bracelet still encircling her wrist. In less than 24 hours, she'd gone from unemployed and desperate to embedded in one of Chicago's most dangerous families. She'd gained financial security for her brother, but sacrificed her anonymity and possibly her safety. A soft knock on the connecting door interrupted her thoughts. Isabella stood in the doorway wearing princess pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit that looked well-loved and frequently hugged. "Can't sleep?" Sofia signed. Isabella shook her head, her hands moving slowly. "When it's dark, I remember. The hallway was dark. Mama's dress was dark. Everything was dark except the blood." Sofia's breath caught at the visceral detail. This child had been living with that image for 3 years, probably experiencing it every night when darkness fell. "Would you like me to sit with you until you fall asleep?" Sofia offered. Relief flooded Isabella's face as she nodded eagerly. They settled onto Isabella's bed, an enormous four-poster that could have slept 5 adults comfortably, with Sofia keeping a respectful distance while remaining close enough for comfort. "Tell me a story," Isabella signed. "Not a pretend one, a real one about you." So Sofia did. She talked about her parents, the factory fire, how she'd raised her baby brother from age 17. She signed about working 3 jobs and still not having enough money, about the terror of watching someone you love suffer and being helpless to fix it. "Were you scared?" Isabella asked. "Every single day," Sofia admitted. "But I loved my brother more than I was scared. Love made me brave when I wanted to give up." Isabella processed this, her small face thoughtful in the nightlight's soft glow. "Do you think love can make me brave enough to talk again?" The question struck Sofia like a physical blow. This child wanted to speak, desperately wanted to reconnect her voice to her thoughts. But something, fear, trauma, protection, kept the words locked inside. "I think love can help you find your voice again, whatever form that takes." Sofia signed carefully. "Maybe it will be spoken words. Maybe it will be sign language. Maybe it will be drawing or writing or music. But your voice is still there, Isabella. It's just waiting for you to feel safe enough to let it out." Isabella's eyes filled with tears that finally spilled over. 3 years of suppressed grief finding release in the darkness that had always triggered her worst memories. But this time, she wasn't alone. Sofia pulled the crying child close, let her sob into her shoulder, and hummed the same melody from earlier until Isabella's breathing eventually evened into sleep. Sofia was trying to extract herself without waking the child when she noticed movement in the doorway. Dante stood there partially in shadow, watching them with an expression that made Sofia's heart constrict. Raw vulnerability, desperate hope, and something else she couldn't quite identify, but that made her pulse quicken uncomfortably. "How long have you been standing there?" she whispered, keeping her voice low. "Long enough." He stepped into the room, moving with surprising grace for a man his size. "She hasn't cried like that since the funeral. The therapist said it was concerning, that she was bottling everything up." "Grief has to go somewhere," Sofia replied softly. "If it can't come out as tears or words, it comes out as silence or violence or 1,000 other destructive ways." Dante studied his sleeping daughter, his hand reaching out to brush dark hair from her tear-stained face with heartbreaking gentleness. "I failed her," he said quietly, the admission clearly costing him. "I was so focused on keeping her physically safe that I didn't realize I was keeping her emotionally isolated." "You were protecting her the only way you knew how," Sofia countered. "That's not failure. That's love." His eyes snapped to hers, dark and intense in the dim lighting. "Is it? Because from where I stand, loving people in my world seems to destroy them. My wife is dead. My daughter is silent. And now I've dragged you into this mess and put a target on your back." "I chose to stay," Sofia reminded him. "For my brother, yes, but also because that little girl looked at me and I saw myself. The scared kid who lost everything and had to figure out how to survive in a world that suddenly made no sense." Something shifted in Dante's expression, a crack in his armor that revealed the man beneath the monster reputation. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone opportunistic. Someone who saw my wealth and decided they could stomach the danger for the payoff." He glanced toward the window where security lights illuminated the grounds. "I didn't expect someone who would actually care about my daughter beyond the paycheck." "Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people," Sofia stated. "Isabella is easy to love. She's bright and creative and brave in ways most adults could never manage. The fact that she's survived this much trauma with her spirit intact is remarkable. She gets that from her mother." Dante's voice roughened. "Gabriella was the strongest person I ever knew, soft on the surface but steel underneath. She chose to stay with me knowing what I was, what I did. She thought she could balance out the darkness with enough light. Did she?" "For a while." His expression darkened. "Until my enemies used that light to find her weak spots. They knew she attended that charity gala every year, knew her security details patterns, knew exactly when and where she'd be most vulnerable. They studied my wife the way predators study prey, and they struck when she'd let her guard down to help a children's hospital raise money." The bitter irony wasn't lost on Sofia. Gabriella had died while trying to do something good, betrayed by her own compassion in a world that punished kindness as weakness. "I should go," Dante said abruptly, as if suddenly aware of how much he'd revealed. "You've had a long day, And tomorrow we start Isabella's new routine with you fully integrated. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at Sofia with an intensity that made her breath catch. Thank you. For staying. For seeing my daughter as more than a paycheck or a responsibility. He struggled with the words. For caring. Then he was gone, leaving Sofia alone with a sleeping child, and the unsettling realization that Dante Marcello was far more complex and human than a man in his position had any right to be. She carefully extricated herself from Isabella's grip, tucking the child under soft blankets before retreating to her own room. Through the monitor, she could see Isabella's peaceful face, finally relaxed in genuine sleep rather than the tense unconsciousness that had probably been her norm for 3 years. Sofia's phone buzzed with a message from the hospital. Her brother's new treatment team had already begun consultations, with the first round of the experimental protocol scheduled for Monday. Dante's influence had accomplished in hours what she'd spent months fighting for. She was in his debt now, bound to this household by gold bracelets and medical miracles, by a silent child who'd grabbed her heart, and by a dangerous man who somehow managed to be both monster and devoted father without contradiction. As Sofia drifted toward sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd crossed more than just a physical threshold into the Marcello mansion. She'd entered a story already in progress, with roles assigned and stakes determined before her arrival. The only question was whether she'd survive long enough to see how that story ended. The fragile peace lasted exactly 17 days. Sofia had fallen into a rhythm with Isabella that felt almost natural. Morning art sessions on the terrace, afternoon lessons where they practiced sign language together, evenings filled with stories and gentle reassurance until the little girl could sleep without nightmares. The transformation was remarkable. Isabella smiled more, engaged more, even laughed silently at Sofia's exaggerated facial expressions during their communication games. Dante watched these changes with an expression Sofia had learned to recognize, hope warring with the superstitious belief that happiness in his world never lasted. He'd begun joining their sessions when business allowed, his clumsy signing improving daily as he discovered ways to communicate with his daughter that didn't require her voice. Then everything changed on a Tuesday morning when Marco burst into the breakfast terrace with an expression that made Sofia's blood run cold. "Sir, we have a situation," he announced in rapid Italian, though Sofia had picked up enough from Isabella's lessons to understand the urgency. Rossi's men took out the south perimeter. They're moving toward the estate in force. Dante's transformation was instantaneous. The gentle father vanished, replaced by the cold strategist whose reputation was built on calculated violence. How many? At least 20 that we've confirmed, possibly more staged nearby. Marco's jaw tightened. They knew exactly when the shift change happened. We have a leak. Isabella's hands had frozen mid-sign, her eyes wide with recognition of a scenario she'd been through before. Sofia moved immediately to the child's side, her training with Marco kicking in despite her racing heart. "Protocol Delta," Dante ordered, his voice devoid of emotion even as his eyes flickered to his daughter with barely concealed fear. "Get them to the panic room, now." Sofia scooped Isabella into her arms. The little girl was shaking but silent, always silent even in her terror, and followed Marco's rapid retreat into the mansion. Behind them, she heard Dante barking orders, the sound of weapons being distributed, the organized chaos of men preparing for battle. The route to Isabella's room felt impossibly long despite Marco's urgent pace. Other staff members were being herded toward different secure locations by additional guards, the entire household mobilizing with practiced efficiency that spoke to rehearsed emergency protocols. They burst into Isabella's bedroom just as the first gunshots echoed from somewhere on the grounds. Isabella flinched violently in Sofia's arms, her small hands clutching so tightly that Sofia's neck would bear bruises later. "You're safe," Sofia signed awkwardly while still holding the child. "I've got you. We're going to the safe place, remember?" Marco was already in the closet, his hand pressing the specific pattern that triggered the hidden door. The steel panel slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing the fortified room beyond. "Inside, now," Marco commanded, ushering them through. "I'm programming your biometrics for the lock. Once I seal this, you don't open it for anyone except Mr. Marcello or myself. Anyone else tries to get in, you use the weapons in the locker, and you protect that child with your life. Understood?" Sofia nodded, her mouth too dry for speech, as the reality of the situation crashed over her. This wasn't a drill. People were actively trying to breach the mansion, to get to Isabella, to finish what they'd started with Gabriella 3 years ago. The steel door sealed with a heavy thunk that felt like a coffin closing. The panic room's lighting was soft and warm, designed to minimize Isabella's distress, but nothing could disguise the bunker-like quality of their prison. Sofia set the little girl down gently, immediately kneeling to her level. "We're okay," she signed, forcing her hands to remain steady despite her terror. "Your papa's guards are very good at their jobs. They'll keep the bad people away?" Isabella's dark eyes were huge in her pale face, her whole body trembling. Her hands moved with frantic speed. Last time, the bad people got inside. They found Mama. They hurt her, even though she begged them not to. The detail struck Sofia like a physical blow. Isabella hadn't just witnessed the murder's aftermath. She'd heard her mother beg for her life, heard pleas that went unanswered. And now those same nightmares were manifesting in reality again. Outside the reinforced walls, the sounds of conflict intensified. Gunfire, sharp cracks that made Isabella flinch with each report, shouting in Italian and English, the crash of something heavy, possibly furniture being overturned or doors being breached. Sofia pulled Isabella close, positioning them in the corner furthest from the door, and began humming the melody that had become their comfort ritual. Her own heart hammered so loudly she was certain Isabella could hear it, but she kept her expression calm, her movements soothing. "Tell me about your favorite drawing," Sofia signed, desperate to distract the terrified child from the violence beyond their sanctuary. "The one with all the butterflies." Isabella's hands moved mechanically at first, then with increasing focus as Sofia asked detailed questions about colors and patterns. The conversation was absurd given their circumstances, discussing art while men fought and possibly died just beyond their steel cocoon. But it gave Isabella something to focus on besides her trauma. 20 minutes passed, then 40. The sounds beyond the walls shifted from intense combat to sporadic shots, then to an eerie quiet that was somehow worse than the chaos. Sofia's bracelet suddenly buzzed against her wrist, a pattern she recognized from Marco's training. 3 short pulses, pause, 2 long pulses, the all-clear signal, or possibly a trap to lure them out. "Stay here," Sofia signed to Isabella. "Don't move until I know it's safe." She approached the door carefully, her hand hovering over the biometric scanner. The training Marco had drilled into her played on repeat. "Confirm identity verbally before opening. Check the security camera feed. If anything feels wrong, stay sealed." Sofia pulled up the camera feed on the panic room's tablet, her breath catching at what the external cameras revealed. Bodies on the grounds, some in the black tactical gear of the Rossi forces, others in the suits of Dante's guards. Blood on marble floors, shattered windows, the beautiful mansion transformed into a war zone. And there, standing outside Isabella's bedroom door, was Dante. His suit jacket was gone, shirt torn and bloodied, a cut above his left eye still bleeding. But he was alive, he was standing, and he was alone. "Sofia." His voice came through the intercom, rough with exhaustion and something else. "It's over? They're all dead or captured. You can come out now." Sofia studied the screen carefully, looking for signs of coercion, a gun to his back, hostages held out of frame, anything that would indicate a trap. But Dante stood alone, His shoulders slumped with the weight of what had just transpired. "What's the code phrase?" Sofia called back, remembering Marco's warning about verification protocols. A ghost of a smile crossed Dante's bloodied face. Gabriella's garden metaphor, that even in dark places, beautiful things can grow. The specific detail, something only the three of them knew, confirmed his identity. Sofia pressed her palm to the scanner, hearing the lock's mechanisms disengage with a series of heavy clicks. The door slid open to reveal Dante's full state, worse than the camera had shown. His right hand was wrapped in a makeshift bandage already soaking through, and he moved with the careful stiffness of someone with broken or bruised ribs. But his eyes, when they found Isabella peeking out from behind Sofia's legs, softened with relief so profound it transformed his entire face. "Papa!" Isabella's hands formed the sign, then she did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She made a sound. Not words, but a small, wounded cry as she launched herself at her father. Dante dropped to his knees, wincing as the movement jarred injured ribs and caught his daughter against his chest. His large hand cradled the back of her head as he rocked her gently, murmuring Italian endearments while Isabella's small body shook with silent sobs. Sofia felt tears burning her own eyes at the scene. This brutal man holding his traumatized daughter with such exquisite gentleness, both of them clinging to each other like drowning victims finding solid ground. "Is she hurt?" Dante asked roughly, his eyes scanning Isabella for injuries even as he held her. "No. Scared, but physically unharmed." Sofia glanced toward the bedroom doorway where Marco now appeared, his face grim. "What happened?" "Rossi made his move," Marco explained tersely. 23 men total. They breached the south perimeter using explosives, took out 4 of our guards in the initial assault. His expression darkened. "We captured their second-in-command alive. He confirmed what we suspected. Someone inside gave them our security protocols." Dante's arms tightened around Isabella, his expression turning to cold stone. "Who?" "Thomas Brennan, your accountant. He's been feeding the Rossi family information for 6 months in exchange for a cut of the drug trade they plan to establish once you were eliminated." Sofia recognized the name. Brennan had been at the mansion several times over the past weeks, always pleasant and professional. The betrayal had come from within, just as it had 3 years ago with Gabriella's murder. "Where is he?" Dante's voice was soft, deadly. "Secured in the West Wing interrogation room, awaiting your attention." The implication was clear. Sofia looked away, not wanting to see the transformation in Dante's face as he contemplated what he'd do to the man who'd endangered his daughter. "Marco, get medical teams in here for our wounded. Move the bodies before—" Dante glanced at Isabella. "Before they're seen by anyone who shouldn't see them. And contact our police contacts. I want this officially recorded as a home invasion gone wrong." The casual discussion of manipulating law enforcement while holding his traumatized daughter revealed the strange duality of Dante's existence, monster and father existing in the same breath without cognitive dissonance. "Miss Chen," Dante said, his attention shifting to Sofia. "I need you to take Isabella to the East Safe House while we clean up here. It's not safe for her to see—" "No." The word was out before Sofia could stop it. "She needs you, not another location. The mansion is her home. If you exile her every time something bad happens, you're teaching her that violence erases the places she loves." Dante's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You're questioning my judgment regarding my daughter's safety?" "I'm questioning whether safety is just physical, or if it's also emotional," Sofia countered, aware she was pushing boundaries but unable to stop. "She just survived another attack. Watching you walk away to handle business while she's sent away will reinforce every fear about being abandoned. Stay. Let the cleanup happen around you. Show her that home is still home even after bad things happen." The silence stretched taut enough to snap. Marco looked between them with barely concealed fascination. Apparently no one challenged Dante Marcello's decisions regarding his daughter. Then Isabella's hands moved, signing to her father with tear-stained determination. "I want to stay with you and Sofia. Please, Papa, don't send me away again." The again carried the weight of 3 years of isolation, of being shuffled to safe houses and separate wings, of protection that felt like exile. Dante's resistance crumbled visibly. "Okay, Piccola, you stay." He looked at Marco. "Have the cleanup crews focus on areas Isabella doesn't access. Her wing stays pristine. And someone find Dr. Castellano. I want Isabella checked thoroughly, despite Sofia's assessment." As Marco moved to execute orders, Dante struggled to stand, his injuries making the movement difficult. Sofia instinctively moved to help, sliding under his arm to provide support despite the bloodstains that would now mark her clothes. "I can walk on my own," Dante protested, though he didn't pull away. "I know," Sofia replied, "but you don't have to." They made their way slowly through the mansion, Isabella clinging to her father's other side, the three of them forming an unlikely unit amidst the chaos. Staff members moved efficiently around them, removing evidence of violence with practiced ease that spoke to how often this scenario played out. Dr. Castellano, a sophisticated woman in her 50s, who apparently served as the Marcello family's private physician, arrived within 20 minutes. She examined Isabella thoroughly in the little girl's bedroom while Sofia held her hand, finding no physical injuries beyond elevated stress markers. "Her heart rate is concerning," Dr. Castellano noted, her expression troubled. "She's experiencing acute traumatic stress response. I recommend—" "No medication," Dante interrupted firmly. "We've been down that road. It made her worse." "Then she needs stability, routine, and consistent emotional support," the doctor countered. "The worst thing you could do right now is disrupt her environment further." Her pointed look at Dante made her meaning clear. His tendency to isolate Isabella after incidents was counterproductive. Sofia felt a small surge of vindication for her earlier stance. After the doctor left, Sofia helped Isabella change into comfortable pajamas despite it being midday. The little girl was exhausted from adrenaline crash, her eyes drooping even as her hands occasionally signed questions about what was happening outside her safe wing. "Your papa is making sure everything is secure," Sofia explained, settling beside Isabella on the bed. "All the bad people are gone. They can't hurt you or anyone else now." "Did Papa kill them?" Isabella's question was matter-of-fact, revealing how normalized violence had become in her young life. Sofia chose her words carefully, signing with deliberate honesty. "Your papa protected his family. Sometimes protecting people means doing hard things, things that hurt our hearts, even when they're necessary." Isabella processed this, her small face thoughtful. "Does that make him a bad person?" The question cut to the core of Sofia's own internal struggle. How did you explain moral complexity to a 7-year-old? How did you acknowledge that the man who tucked his daughter in at night was the same man who'd likely just ordered executions in his West Wing? "Your papa is a complicated person," Sofia signed finally. "He does things I don't agree with, things that scare me sometimes. But the love he has for you is real and good and pure. People can be many things at once, good and bad, gentle and dangerous, loving and frightening. That's what makes them human." Isabella's eyes were drifting closed, but her hands formed one more sign. "Are you scared of Papa?" Sofia considered lying, then decided this child deserved honesty. "Sometimes yes, but I also see how much he loves you, and that makes me trust him with the things that matter most." Isabella's breathing evened into sleep, her small hand clutched around Sofia's fingers. Sofia sat with her as afternoon faded to evening, watching the child's face for signs of nightmares that never came. Perhaps because this time, the danger had been survived together rather than endured alone. A soft knock announced Dante's presence. He'd showered and changed, the blood and grime replaced by clean clothes, though he moved with the careful stiffness of someone in significant pain. His right hand was properly bandaged now, and the cut above his eye had been treated with butterfly strips. "How is she?" he asked quietly, settling into the chair across from Isabella's bed. "Exhausted but stable. Dr. Castellano was right about the stress markers, though. She can't keep living like this, Dante, waiting for the next attack. Never feeling completely safe." His jaw tightened. "You think I don't know that? You think I enjoy raising my daughter in a fortress?" "Then leave," Sofia said simply. "Walk away from this life. Take Isabella somewhere safe and start over." Dante's laugh was bitter, humorless. "You think it's that simple? That I can just retire from being who I am? The Rossi family wasn't the only organization that wants me dead, Miss Chen. They're just the ones who moved first. If I show weakness, if I run, every enemy I've ever made will come for what remains of my family." "So you're trapped," Sofia realized, "by your own reputation and the blood you've spilled building it." "We're all trapped by our choices." His dark eyes met hers. "You chose to stay here knowing what I am. That makes you complicit in this life, whether you want to acknowledge it or not." The accusation stung because it was true. Sofia had accepted money earned through violence. She'd benefited from Dante's criminal influence to save her brother. She'd become part of the machinery that sustained this dangerous world. "Then help me understand," she said quietly. "Help me understand how a man who loves his daughter as much as you do can also be responsible for the things you've done." Dante was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on his sleeping daughter. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with emotion usually kept locked away. "I was 18 when my father was killed by rivals. They tortured him for 3 days, sent pieces to my mother until she died of a heart attack from the stress. I inherited a criminal empire I never wanted and enemies who thought a teenager would be easy to eliminate." His scarred hand flexed unconsciously. "I learned quickly that in this world, mercy is weakness and compassion is a liability. So I became the monster they feared. I buried my humanity so deep I thought I'd never find it again." He paused, his expression softening as he looked at Isabella. "Then Gabriella happened. She was an art student who accidentally walked into one of my businesses during a disagreement. She saw me at my worst, covered in blood that wasn't mine, standing over a man who'd betrayed me. And instead of running, she asked if I was hurt." Sofia felt her breath catch at the image, a young woman seeing past the violence to the person beneath. "She shouldn't have loved me," Dante continued. "She definitely shouldn't have married me. But she did. And for 8 years she made me believe I could be more than the monster my circumstances had created. Isabella was born, and suddenly I had this perfect, innocent thing that depended on me. I tried to keep them separate from my business, to give them a clean life funded by dirty money." His voice broke slightly. "But I failed. Gabriella died because of who I am, and Isabella was traumatized into silence. The two people I loved most paid the price for my inability to leave this world behind." Sofia absorbed his confession, understanding dawning. Dante Marcello wasn't a monster who occasionally showed humanity. He was a man who'd been forced to become monstrous to survive, and who was slowly being destroyed by the cost of that transformation. "It's not too late," she said softly. "Isabella is still here. She's healing, slowly. You could still walk away, rebuild somewhere else." "And how long until someone finds us?" Dante interrupted. "A year? 5 years? 10? And when they do, what happens to Isabella when I'm dead and she's alone in a world that doesn't understand her silence or her trauma?" The question revealed his deepest fear, not his own death, but his daughter facing the world without protection after he was gone. "Then teach her to be strong," Sofia suggested, "not by shielding her from everything, but by showing her how to survive. She's more resilient than you think. Today proved that she held together through an attack, communicated her needs, adapted to danger. Those are survival skills. Dante studied her with an intensity that made Sofia's skin prickle with awareness. "You're not what I expected," he said, echoing his words from days earlier. "Most people either worship or fear me. You seem to do neither." "I see you," Sofia replied honestly. "The good and the bad, the monster and the father. And I understand that both are real. Both are you. I don't have to approve of your choices to recognize why you made them." Something shifted in Dante's expression, a crack in his carefully maintained armor. Gabriella used to say something similar, that she saw all of me and loved me anyway, not despite my darkness, but including it. The comparison to his dead wife should have felt inappropriate, but instead it felt like trust. Like Dante was acknowledging that Sofia had somehow become more than just his daughter's caretaker. She'd become someone whose opinion mattered in ways that made him vulnerable. "I should check on the cleanup," Dante said abruptly, standing with visible discomfort. "And I need to deal with Brennan before—" He caught himself, glancing at Isabella's sleeping form. "Before you do whatever you're planning to do to him," Sofia finished. "I won't ask you not to. I know that's not how your world works. But promise me, Isabella won't ever know the details. She's already seen too much." "I promise." Dante moved toward the door, then paused. "Sofia, thank you. For protecting her today. For staying calm when you had every right to panic. For—" he struggled with the words. "For caring about her as more than just a job." "She's easy to love," Sofia said simply, the same words she'd used before. Dante's expression suggested he was beginning to suspect the same might be true of him, at least in Sofia's eyes. The thought seemed to unsettle him more than any physical threat. After he left, Sofia remained with Isabella through the night, dozing fitfully in the chair beside the bed. She woke periodically to check on the child, each time finding her sleeping peacefully rather than trapped in the nightmares that had plagued her for years. Perhaps surviving danger together had given Isabella something previous attacks hadn't: proof that the people she loved would fight to protect her. That she wasn't alone in her fear. Dawn brought Mrs. Calabrese with breakfast and news delivered in her carefully neutral tone. "The situation has been resolved. Mr. Marcello extends his gratitude to all household staff for their discretion and efficiency. Normal operations resume today." The casual announcement of normal operations after yesterday's violence was surreal, revealing how routine such incidents were in Dante's world. Sofia accepted the breakfast tray mechanically, her mind still processing everything that had happened. Isabella woke slowly, her first action signing to Sofia. "Is Papa okay?" "He's fine," Sofia assured her. "A few injuries, but nothing serious. He's already back to work making sure everyone is safe." They fell into their usual morning routine, breakfast on the terrace despite Sofia's nerves about being exposed. But Dante had tripled the visible security, and Marco himself stood watch nearby, his presence both reassuring and unsettling. "Miss Chen," Marco approached as Isabella finished eating. "Mr. Marcello requests your presence in his office when Isabella's settled with her morning activities." Sofia's stomach clenched. The formal summons suggested this wasn't casual. Dante had something important to discuss, something that required privacy from his daughter. She got Isabella engaged with her art supplies, the little girl happily drawing what appeared to be a garden scene, before making her way through the mansion to Dante's office. The West Wing where Brennan had reportedly been held showed no signs of the previous night's interrogation, cleaned with the same efficiency that had erased all evidence of the attack. Dante stood at his office windows, his posture rigid despite visible discomfort from his injuries. He didn't turn when Sofia entered, his attention fixed on the grounds where workers were repairing damage to walls and gates. 17 of my men were injured yesterday," he said without preamble. 4 killed. The Rossi family lost 23, including their leadership. Thomas Brennan provided information that helped us anticipate several of their tactical moves before his betrayal was discovered. Sofia remained silent, unsure where this recitation of casualties was leading. The war with the Rossi organization is over, Dante continued. Their remaining lieutenants have agreed to terms that effectively absorb what's left of their operation into my oversight. Chicago is now consolidated under single management for the first time in 20 years. He finally turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Which means the immediate threats to Isabella have been significantly reduced. Not eliminated. There will always be enemies, but the urgent danger has passed. That's good news, Sofia ventured carefully. It means you're free to leave if you wish. The statement landed like a bomb. Your brother's treatment is fully funded regardless of your employment status. I've established a trust that will cover his medical needs for life. You've fulfilled your obligation to my family. You don't have to stay in this dangerous world anymore. Sofia felt her heart clench painfully. He was giving her an out, releasing her from the golden cage. But the careful neutrality in his voice suggested this wasn't what he wanted. It was what he thought she deserved. Is this what you want? She asked directly. For me to leave? Dante's mask cracked slightly. What I want is irrelevant. You've seen what my life involves. The violence, the moral compromises, the constant threat. No one should choose to stay in this unless they have no other option. And if I want to stay, Sofia pressed, not because I'm trapped or obligated, but because I've come to care about Isabella and... She faltered, then continued with deliberate honesty. And about what happens to both of you? The admission hung between them, transforming the atmosphere in the office. Dante's carefully controlled expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, hope, resistance, before settling into something raw and vulnerable. You don't know what you're saying, he said roughly. Caring about us is dangerous, Sofia. Everyone I've ever loved has been destroyed by that association. Gabriella is dead. Isabella is traumatized. I won't add you to that list. Maybe I'm stronger than you think, Sofia countered. Maybe I can make my own choices about acceptable risks. You told me yesterday that I'm complicit in this life just by staying. Well, I choose complicity. I choose to stay, to help Isabella continue healing, to... She stopped, unsure how to articulate the complicated feelings Dante himself evoked. Fear and attraction, disapproval and understanding. The awareness that this dangerous man somehow made her feel more alive than her previous safe, small existence ever had. Dante crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, moving despite his injuries with predatory intensity. He stopped just close enough that Sofia could feel his presence like heat, his dark eyes searching hers for something she couldn't name. If you stay, he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion, it can't be just for Isabella. I need to know. He struggled with vulnerability clearly foreign to him. I need to know if what I'm feeling, this impossible thing growing between us, is mutual, or if I'm reading connections that don't exist. Sofia's breath caught at the confession. The feared crime lord was admitting to feelings, making himself vulnerable in ways that probably terrified him more than any physical threat. It's mutual, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It's terrifying and inappropriate, and probably the worst decision I could make. But yes, Dante, what you're feeling, I feel it too. His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away, before cupping her face with surprising gentleness. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, the touch sending electricity through her nervous system. I can't promise you safety, he said, his forehead coming to rest against hers. I can't promise you a normal life or freedom from fear. All I can promise is that I will do everything in my power to protect you, and that whatever this is between us, it's real. That's enough, Sofia replied, her own hands coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palms. Real is enough. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable. Gentle at first, almost questioning, then deepening with the urgency of two people who'd been denying attraction born in crisis. Dante's arms wrapped around her carefully, mindful of his injuries but unable to resist the need for closeness. They broke apart eventually, both breathing hard, awareness of crossed lines written across both their faces. This complicates everything, Dante murmured against her hair. Yes, Sofia agreed. But maybe complicated is better than empty. A knock on the door interrupted whatever Dante might have said next. Marco entered with an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. Sir, the contractors are here to discuss security upgrades, and Miss Isabella is asking for Sofia. Reality reasserted itself. Whatever was growing between them existed in the spaces between danger and duty, complicated by a child who needed them both. We should talk about this more, Dante said, releasing Sofia reluctantly. About what it means, how we move forward. Later, Sofia agreed. Right now, Isabella needs her routine maintained. That comes first. The approval in Dante's eyes suggested that was exactly the right answer. 3 months after the Rossi attack, the Marcello household had settled into a new rhythm. The security upgrades were complete. Even more sophisticated systems that made the estate virtually impenetrable. But more importantly, the people within those walls had transformed. Isabella was speaking again. It had started small, a whispered good night to Sofia one evening, so soft it could have been imagined. Then, Papa one morning at breakfast, the single word making Dante freeze with his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Within weeks, she was forming simple sentences, her voice rusty from disuse but growing stronger daily. Dr. Castellano called it remarkable, unprecedented even. Sofia knew the truth. Isabella had found her voice again because she finally felt safe enough to use it, because she'd survived danger with people she loved and learned that even terrifying things could be overcome together. The little girl's vocabulary grew daily, though she still preferred sign language for complex emotions or when overwhelmed. Sofia and Dante had both become fluent signers, creating a household where multiple forms of communication coexisted naturally. Sofia, Isabella called from the terrace where she was drawing. Her voice was sweet, slightly raspy, and the most beautiful sound Sofia had ever heard. Can you help me with the shading on this rose? Sofia moved to assist, marveling at how much had changed since that first chaotic day when she'd found a silent child in the corner of a destroyed room. Isabella's art had become increasingly sophisticated, her drawings now capturing nuance and emotion that spoke to deep processing of her trauma. This particular piece showed a garden with roses in both light and shadow, her mother's metaphor made visual. It's beautiful, Sofia praised honestly. Your mama would be so proud. I think so too, Isabella agreed, with the simple confidence of a child who'd learned to trust her own perceptions. Papa says she's watching from heaven and smiling at how brave I've become. Dante had been working hard on reframing strength and bravery for his daughter, moving away from the toxic messaging that had characterized his own childhood. It was a work in progress, but the effort was evident. Speaking of Dante, he appeared in the terrace doorway right on schedule for their daily family lunch. These meals had become sacred. 1 hour where business was forbidden and they existed simply as a family unit that grew more cohesive daily. How are my favorite ladies? He asked, kissing Isabella's head before his hand found Sofia's waist in the casual intimacy that had developed between them. Their relationship had progressed carefully, respectfully, always with Isabella's well-being as the primary consideration. They hadn't hidden their growing connection from the child, but they'd been thoughtful about how it was presented. Isabella, for her part, had adapted beautifully. Sofia makes Papa happy. she'd observed one day with a child's directness. And Papa makes Sofia smile even when she's worried about her brother. That's good. Mama would approve. The invocation of Gabriella's blessing had nearly undone Dante. His eyes, suspiciously bright as he'd pulled both his daughter and Sofia into a fierce embrace. Now, as they settled around the lunch table, Isabella chattered about her morning art session, while Sofia and Dante exchanged glances filled with shared affection and wonder at how much their lives had transformed. "I've been thinking," Isabella announced suddenly, her expression serious. "I want to help other kids who've lost their voices like I did." Dante set down his fork, giving his daughter his complete attention. "What did you have in mind, Piccola?" "A program," Isabella explained with surprising sophistication for a 7-year-old, "where kids who've seen scary things can learn sign language and art, and all the ways to communicate when talking feels too hard. Sophia and I could teach them." Sophia felt her throat tighten with emotion at the idea. Isabella wanting to transform her trauma into something that helped others was the ultimate evidence of her healing. "That's a beautiful idea," Dante said, his voice rough with pride. "We could establish it through the charitable foundation, find a facility, hire specialists, and keep it separate from your business," Sophia interjected gently. "A genuinely clean operation that can't be compromised by your other activities." Dante's expression flickered with discomfort at the reminder of his dual existence, but he nodded. "Agreed. Isabella's foundation will be completely legitimate, beyond reproach. She deserves to build something beautiful that isn't tainted by my past." The acknowledgement of wanting better for his daughter than he'd managed for himself was significant progress. Dante was beginning to envision a future where Isabella could escape the cycle of violence that had defined his life. Over the following months, they worked together to establish the Isabella Marcello Foundation for Traumatized Children. The name had been Isabella's choice, a way of owning her story rather than hiding from it. The facility opened in a beautiful converted brownstone on Chicago's north side, far from Dante's business operations. Sophia managed the day-to-day operations, her psychology background finally put to use in ways that felt purposeful. Isabella participated when her schedule allowed, an inspiring presence for children who saw their own struggles reflected in her journey from silence to speech. Dante's involvement was carefully limited to financial support and occasional visits, where he was introduced simply as Isabella's father, without the criminal reputation that defined him elsewhere. Sophia watched him navigate these visits with fascination, the deadly crime lord becoming almost shy around the children, clearly uncomfortable with innocence after years of dwelling in darkness. One evening, after a particularly successful foundation event, Dante found Sophia in the mansion's library. She was reviewing case files for new students, making notes about communication strategies that might help each child. "You're changing my world," he said without preamble, settling into the chair across from her. "Not just Isabella, me, making me believe redemption might actually be possible." Sophia looked up from her work, taking in the man who'd somehow become essential to her existence despite the danger and moral complexity he represented. "You're changing yourself," she corrected. "I'm just witnessing it." "It's more than that." Dante leaned forward, his expression intense. "Before you arrived, I was going through motions. Protecting Isabella, but not really living. Surviving, but not healing. You showed me that those things don't have to be mutually exclusive." "What are you saying?" Sophia asked, her heart beginning to race. Dante pulled a small box from his jacket pocket, opening it to reveal a stunning ring, a ruby surrounded by diamonds that caught the library's warm light. "I'm saying that I love you, that I want whatever forever looks like in my dangerous world. That if you'll have me, all of me including the darkness, I'll spend every day earning that gift." Sophia's breath caught. Marriage to Dante Marcello meant fully embracing the life she'd stumbled into. The danger, the moral compromises, the constant awareness of threats. But it also meant family, purpose, and a love she'd never expected to find. Isabella, she started. Already asked her permission, Dante interrupted with a slight smile. She said, and I quote, "Obviously you should marry Sofia. She makes us both better." Then she offered to design the wedding invitations. Sofia laughed through sudden tears, the weight of the decision settling over her. This wasn't a fairy tale. The prince was a criminal. The castle was a fortress, and happy ever after would be complicated by violence and vigilance. But it was real, and real, she'd learned, was worth more than safe. "Yes," Sofia said, watching joy transform Dante's usually guarded expression. "Yes to all of it. The darkness and the light. The danger and the love. All of it. Together." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, a visible claim that she now belonged to this dangerous world. Dante pulled her close, his kiss communicating everything words couldn't capture: gratitude, promise, and a love that had grown in the shadows of his criminal empire. "We'll have to be careful," he murmured against her hair. "Plan security for the wedding. Keep certain elements of my business separate." "Later," Sofia interrupted, echoing her words from months earlier. "Right now, just be here with me. Let yourself be happy without calculating the risks." For once, Dante listened. For once, the crime lord who controlled half of Chicago surrendered control and simply existed in a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. The wedding took place in the mansion's garden 6 months later, a small ceremony attended only by those who understood the complicated nature of what was being celebrated. Isabella served as flower girl, her white dress and radiant smile capturing the transformation they'd all undergone. Marco stood as Dante's best man, the loyal soldier who'd watched his boss slowly remember how to be human. Mrs. Calabresi wept openly, her stern exterior cracking as she witnessed the family she'd helped hold together finally find peace. Sofia's brother attended in remission, his leukemia beaten back by the experimental treatment Dante's influence had secured. The young man had been skeptical of his sister's choices until meeting Isabella and seeing the genuine love within this unconventional family. As Sofia walked down the garden aisle, she caught sight of Dante waiting at the altar. He wore an impeccably tailored suit that couldn't quite hide his dangerous nature, his scarred hands clasped before him, his expression revealing vulnerability rarely shown to the world. This was her choice, her family, her future. The vows they exchanged were traditional with one addition. Both promised to protect Isabella, to honor Gabriella's memory by raising her daughter with love and honesty, and to build something beautiful despite the darkness surrounding them. When Dante kissed his bride, Isabella cheered loudly, her voice clear and strong, a testament to how far they'd all come from that first chaotic day when a desperate housekeeper had calmed a silent child with simple compassion. The Isabella Marcello Foundation had expanded to 3 locations across Chicago, helping hundreds of traumatized children find their voices through art, sign language, and therapeutic support. Isabella, now 12, was an active board member, her own experiences informing programs that combined academic research with practical compassion. The foundation's success had exceeded even Sofia's hopes. Children who arrived silent and withdrawn left months later laughing, communicating, healing. Parents who'd lost hope found it again in the halls of the converted brownstone. And Isabella, once the traumatized child who couldn't speak, had become a beacon of possibility for families drowning in despair. Sofia divided her time between the foundation and the Marcello household, now expanded to include a baby brother for Isabella. 3-year-old Marco had been born 2 years after the wedding, his arrival bringing joy neither Sofia nor Dante had dared hope for. He was named for the loyal guard who'd become like family and who'd cried unashamedly when asked to be the boy's godfather. Dante had gradually legitimized portions of his business empire, though Sofia harbored no illusions that he'd completely left his criminal past behind. Some debts couldn't be erased, some enemies never forgot. But he'd created separation between his two worlds, ensuring his children grew up with cleaner hands than his own had ever been. The estate remained a fortress, but the walls now protected a home filled with laughter rather than just a stronghold against threats. The biggest surprise came when Isabella announced her intention to become a child psychologist, specifically working with trauma survivors. "I want to help kids the way Sofia helped me," she explained with the conviction of someone who'd found her calling early. "Show them that being broken doesn't mean staying broken." On a quiet Sunday evening, the family gathered on the same terrace where Sofia had first truly connected with Isabella years before. The little girl who'd been silent and terrified had become an articulate, compassionate young woman. The crime lord who'd been hardened by violence had softened enough to laugh freely with his children. And Sofia, the desperate housekeeper who'd stumbled into this world, had found a purpose and love beyond anything she'd imagined possible. "What are you thinking about?" Dante asked, his arm around Sofia's waist as they watched Isabella teach young Marco how to sign, "I love you." "How lucky we are," Sofia replied honestly. "How easily this could have gone differently. If you'd sent me away after that first day. If the Rossi attack had succeeded. If any of 100 things had happened differently." "But they didn't," Dante said, pulling her closer. "We survived. We healed. We built something beautiful in the shadows." He gestured toward their children. "Roses in shadow gardens, just like Gabriella promised." Isabella looked up, catching their embrace, and signed across the terrace. "Happy family. Mama would be so happy." "Yes," Dante signed back, his hands moving with the fluency born of years of practice. "She would be very proud of all of us." As the sun set over their fortified estate, Sofia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She'd entered this world seeking only to save her brother, expecting nothing beyond a paycheck. Instead, she'd found a family, a purpose, and a love, complicated by danger but sustained by truth. The fairy tale had been rewritten. The princess became the hero. The beast remained flawed but loved, and happily ever after looked like vigilance, compromise, and choosing each other daily despite the shadows. And in those shadows, against all odds, beautiful things continued to grow. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.